It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of March 26, 1999. We only got 3 movies to look at today, so let's go ahead and wrap March up. Let's get right to it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, Ron Howard's latest film, the star-studded Ed TV. I mean, I think that trailer kind of sums up the whole movie as a whole. I mean, you basically have Matthew McConaughey as this video store clerk who essentially agrees to have his life filmed by a camera crew for a television show, which is going to run 24 hours a day, show all the trials and tribulations and all the different things going on in the life of this guy. And that's Matthew McConaughey, of course, as Ed. You also have Jenna Elfman, Woody Harrelson, Ellen DeGeneres, Sally Kirkland, Martin Landau, Rob Reiner, Dennis Hopper, Elizabeth Hurley, Clint Howard. And you can definitely tell that this came out kind of at around a time where it was compared very much to The Truman Show, which it is very similar to The Truman Show, but at the same time, though, it was criticized because it was too similar to The Truman Show. But honestly, I actually really like this movie a lot. I think it is a very underrated film. And yes, it has similarities to The Truman Show, but really, this is an idea that has essentially evolved in the 25 years since this has come out. I mean, we now live in a world where people have this type of thing going on. I mean, we don't have a thing where it's one person 24 hours a day, but the film was clearly trying to tell us something way before then, and way before we actually got to this point. I mean, we kind of essentially live in a world with 24-hour reality television, and it's a fun movie, man. I like Matthew McConaughey a lot in this film. I think Jenna Elfman's very good here. There's a lot of great performances from the rest of the cast as well. It doesn't have that quite ambitious elements of voyeuristic nature in television that something like The Truman Show had. I mean, The Truman Show perfected that perfectly, and it had a great performance by Jim Carrey and a great idea by the writer Andrew Niccol and director Peter Weir to make it work, but I do really like this movie a lot. I think it gets unfairly criticized because of how close it came out to the same time The Truman Show did, which is funny because actually one of the people that was in The Truman Show, Harry Shearer, plays a moderator in this movie. He was a talk show host in the Truman Show. You also see cameos by people like Michael Moore, George Plimpton, Bill Maher, Jay Leno, Ariana Huffington. RuPaul's also in here. I mean, it has a big cast overall here. Not everything about it works, but the stuff that does work, I think, does stick out very well. You do really get to like a lot of the people involved in here, and you do get invested in the storylines that are going on here. And I think they did a pretty good job of handling that. It definitely could have been a whole lot better. They could have done a little bit more to kind of distance itself from The Truman Show, but this is ambitious. It's very engaging. It is very funny at times. It definitely has the flaw of kind of being released around the same time as The Truman Show did. Truman Show is definitely the far superior film, but I think this one definitely deserves a lot more credit than it actually gets. I think it is a far more enjoyable film than I think a lot of people give it credit for. I think it is a very well-made film. I highly recommend checking it out. It's one of Ron Howard's most underrated films, in my opinion. It's definitely worth checking out as well. I should also mention that this is actually based off of a Quebec film, Louis XIX, King of the Airways, that actually came out 5 years prior to this, so even before The Truman Show, this was kind of ahead of The Truman Show. But like I said, Truman Show's a better film, but this one definitely deserves a lot more attention. Definitely check it out. You might actually find it pretty enjoyable. So that is Ed TV. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is the new version of The Mod Squad. Because clearly nobody learned the lesson of the Avengers the year before, that sometimes something from a different era of television probably should have stayed there. And the Mod Squad, of course, is based off the 1960s TV series of the same name. Yeah, 1960s, just want to make sure. And you have Julie Barnes, Pete Cochran, and Lincoln Hayes, who are 3 minor delinquents who choose to become undercover cops in place of serving their jail terms. And while their superior is murdered, the superior played by Dennis Farina, the trio sets out to find the real culprits. And the 3 guys here are Claire Danes, Giovanni Ribisi, and Amar Epps. Josh Brolin's also in the film, as well as 2 of the stars from the original TV series, Peggy Limpton and Clarence William III. The director of this is Scott Silver. This was actually his last film he directed before he eventually became more well-known for his films that he wrote, 8 Mile, The Fighter, The Finest Hours, the 2 Joker movies. He's been nominated for 2 Academy Awards since then. And just basically kind of shows you that it's probably better for him to stay on the writing side of things than directing. Although it's been 25 years, it would be interesting to see what he'd do as a director. Interestingly enough, there were some people that were very invested and almost got this part of several parts in the movie, like Julie Barnes. They went to Sarah Michelle Gellar. They went to Melissa Joan Hart, Mila Jovovich. They all passed until Claire Danes eventually got cast, and I mean, it would have been interesting to see if one of those three could possibly take that role. What I thought was very interesting was Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Faris were offered the chance to direct the film, but they turned it down to make music videos instead. Of course, they would later translate that back to film with Little Miss Sunshine, one of the best movies of the decade, of the 2000s, and it would have been interesting to see what they would have brought to the table, considering how their directing style works with their music videos. And again, kind of like with the Avengers, this is just a concept that really needs a good scriptwriter and a good filmmaker to really make this work in a modern era. The Avengers didn't work because they were just going all over the place here. This one's not quite as bad as the Avengers, but it's not that good, but it's pretty darn close. I mean, like, it tries to have this stylish look to it. It just doesn't really have it. Too much is going on. You don't really feel the connection between the three leads whatsoever. And it just feels like the typical really bad TV adaptation. Like, you've got to have people from the original show come in here as these little cameos. It'd be nice if they actually had something to actually do here, but not so much here. This was also a major bomb for MGM. $50 million the budget was. It only brought back $15 million. Thrashed by critics, 3% on Rotten Tomatoes, which actually I think that's a little bit more than the Avengers did the year before. But like I said, that's not really saying a whole lot. Like, saying you got 3% more than the Avengers, that's not something you really should be boasting about. But luckily, everybody here kind of has moved on to much bigger and better things, and this is just one of those things that's just kind of like a possible opportunity wasted on this. Like, I mean, like I said, you really needed to get a good screenwriter and a good director to really bring this into a new generation, and this really was not it. So that is the Mod Squad. So let's go ahead and move on to the last movie, and probably the one we'll have the most conversations about, because this one has a very interesting production history. That is Disney's Doug's first movie. I think someone needs to calm that trailer guy down, because this really is not all that important where you have to overhype it like this, because let's talk about the production history behind this film. I mean, I recently did a video on this channel talking about how back in 1993, 20th Century Fox was going to do a Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy film, and if they had done that, we'd probably be looking at these three coming into the Disney fold, as Disney eventually bought Fox. But of course, Doug was eventually bought in by Disney when Jumbo Pictures was bought by them, and of course Paramount had the Rugrats and Ren and Stimpy, and Rugrats has been the only one that's made it to the big screen. But they decided to revive the project for Doug at Disney, and it was originally planned to be a direct-to-video release, literally titled The First Doug Movie Ever. And I know this because it was on the video cassette release of The Lion King 2 Simba's Pride, which was released on October 27th, 1998. So what do you think happened when the Rugrats movie opened on November 20th, just 3 weeks later, and went on to become one of the first non-Disney animated film to gross $100 million? What do you think happened then? That direct-to-video movie all of a sudden became a theatrical release, which honestly is one of the major problems with the film right away. I mean, this was a movie that was originally supposed to go direct-to-video. It literally had a trailer on the video release of The Lion King 2 in October of 98, late in October 98, and then just 3 weeks later, Rugrats movie's a big hit. Disney realizes, oh shit, we gotta put this on the big screen, even though this clearly does not look like anything for the big screen. And, I mean, like I said before, a lot of the questions in the trailer for this are never answered in the movie, and if they are, you already know the answers, because most people my age at the time would have already figured out what the answers are going to be. Third, they do not do anything different in the movie to make it look like it was meant to be on the big screen. Not a thing. This literally looks like a direct-to-video movie blown up for the big screen. It's the definitive definition of a cash grab, because the Rugrats movie came out 3 weeks later, was a massive hit. Disney said, we got to put this in theaters, even though this thing looks nothing like a theatrical release. And that's how that happened. But also, the plot kind of goes against everything the show was about. I mean, that's really one of the reasons why I never liked Disney's Doug. I mean, when Nickelodeon did the original Doug, it was a great show. It was a great coming-of-age show. It didn't have to go for, like, these incredible, fantastical elements. And even when they did, it was in the mind of Doug as he was having these visions in his head, these daydreams. But here, you have a storyline where Doug and Skeeter have to protect the Lucky Duck Lake Monster, which is a real creature in this world, so now the show that was meant to be more realistic and set in stone has now entered absurdity where you throw in this monster that would never happen in real life. The stuff that happens in this movie would make the stuff that happens in The Simpsons look realistic by comparison. That's how insane this really is. Like, and not only that, every single character in this movie is so stupid. It's like every character in this movie was that their whole thing was that they were supposed to be taken seriously in the original show, have now just been reduced to just simple cardboard cutouts of their former selves, because some of the decisions they make in this are so stupid and so unrealistic, and they just have no personality to it. I'm sorry, Billy West had personality as Doug and Roger, and the people that play him now that play these two now, Tom McHugh and Chris Phillips, they just don't have it, man. Just so much of this movie is just so all over the place. And again, it just kind of reminds me of why I never liked Disney's Doug, because they watered down Doug so badly. Like, in the beginning, it gives you a sense of, okay, we're seeing these old characters back again. Let's see where they go from there. And then they just keep adding these newer elements. It gets Disney-fied. There's not really a whole lot that is, they don't really have that same feel that the Nickelodeon show did. And the fact that most of those episodes now are nearly all the episodes on the Disney's Doug are half-hour long. Like, if you have 11-minute storylines, 22 minutes plus 8 minutes of commercials, like, that makes more sense. And every once in a while they'd have a double-length episode. It'd be once in a while, and it'd be something interesting to watch. But here, it's every episode that's a half-hour long. The same is, it's like they kind of dumbed it down when they went over to Disney, and it just really didn't work as a show, and yet it ran for a good couple of years on there, and quite frankly, I can never understand why. Everybody I talked to who grew up with the original Doug on Nickelodeon and saw the one on Disney really could not understand why that lasted as long as it did. I mean, this movie, just like kind of like what Nickelodeon would do later on down the road with some of their movies, like Hey Arnold the Movie and Rugrats Go Wild. This feels like a cash grab, but in this case, not a particularly good cash grab. It's a lame cash grab that just doesn't work. Like, I mean, if it had just stuck with the direct-to-video movie idea that they had there, it probably would have worked better. You could take it for what it is, but you're putting it in the theaters. You're asking people to pay money to go see this on a big screen. You're tricking people into thinking they're going to see something that was clearly meant for the big screen, when it just really wasn't. And to me, that's just where I draw the line with Doug. I mean, this really was kind of the culmination of everything that went wrong with Doug, because like I said, Doug really was a show when it was on Nickelodeon. It clearly had a simple premise. What made Doug stand out and become as beloved as it did was the simple plot. One thing, the series was clever enough to keep all the stories relatable and topical to many people. I mean, some of the topics the show was able to cover are still relatable, even in such a technologically advanced time that we live in. You also had a great voice cast, and then when they made it over to Doug on Disney, it seems like an inferior product compared to what it was in the original, because it was just sanitized BS. It was important to note that we've talked about it before. Like, this was still when Disney was under this idea that every live-action movie made at the time, as well as their TV shows, had to appeal to the cool kids. Like how Disney saw cool kids. You know, stuff like Quack Pack, Mr. Magoo, Meet the Deedles, I'll Be Home for Christmas. Just these terrible movies and TV shows where Disney forgot what it was before and just made whatever crap they could get to make sure that they were able to appeal to the cool kids, and that's it. And, like I said, it just didn't work as a whole. The stories got way too convoluted and all over the place. A lot of the stories went on for way too long. I mean, like I said, those 11-minute episodes on Nickelodeon seemed like they should be. They were very contained. They were very much contained on their own merits as a whole. But with this, like what Disney did to it, they Disneyfied it to a point where it got so tedious and boring, and you couldn't stop caring about these characters whatsoever. And luckily, Disney has gotten out of this, hey, what are the kids of today up to phase, and became the studio that we know them as today. A couple of their movies recently, not so much, but certainly is a lot better than where they were at 20 years ago. I mean, this is just, bottom line, Doug's first movie, just avoid it like the plague. It's a really bad movie. I know that if you really want to see Doug for what it was, just go watch the Nickelodeon show again. Would it have been great to see a Nickelodeon movie based off of Doug? Absolutely it would have. But we have this, and yeah, it wasn't worth it. So, yeah, avoid it like the plague. That's Doug's first movie for you. You know, it's funny. I was just looking at next week's movies that we have to look at, and I saw the Out of Towners there, and I thought I covered that on an episode of on this episode of Time About the Movies, but no, that was actually a post I did a couple weeks ago for More to Say on the website. So that's one of the movies we'll be covering, and we'll also look at 10 Things I Hate About You, and also the biggest, most influential movie of the year. You could probably say Keanu Reeves and the Wachowski brothers, The Matrix. So we'll have those 3 movies to look at. Let me just check and see if we got anything else here worth talking about. It does not look like it. So next week we'll cover The Matrix, 10 Things I Hate About You, and The Out of Towners. So with that said, that's going to wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.